The experiment. Seth Brundle is a brilliant scientist who invents a revolutionary teleportation device capable of transporting matter instantly between two pods. After successfully testing it on living animals, he becomes convinced the machine is finally ready for a human trial. What Seth doesn't notice is that a common housefly enters the pod with him during the experiment. At first, the results seem incredible. He develops extraordinary strength, endless energy, and heightened reflexes, believing the teleportation has somehow improved him. But the changes quickly become horrifying. His fingernails and teeth begin falling out, coarse hairs grow across his body, and his flesh slowly decays. After examining the machine's records, Seth realizes the teleportation system merged his DNA with the fly's at the molecular level. His transformation accelerates until he becomes the grotesque Brundlefly, losing both his human appearance and his mind. Desperate to undo the mutation, he attempts one last experiment, but it only creates an even more monstrous fusion of man, insect, and machine. Accepting that there is no cure, Seth silently asks Veronica to end his suffering, bringing his tragic nightmare to a heartbreaking conclusion. The living acid. A mysterious meteorite crashes near a quiet town, releasing a strange pink substance unlike anything on Earth. When an elderly man touches it, the gelatinous mass instantly latches onto his hand and begins consuming him from the inside. At the local hospital, doctors quickly realize they are dealing with something far more terrifying than a disease. The creature grows larger with every victim it absorbs, dissolving people alive while they remain fully conscious inside its acidic body. As panic spreads, the blob tears through streets, buildings, underground sewers, and even a crowded movie theater, leaving no chance of escape. Bullets, fire, and explosions prove completely useless, as every attack only delays the inevitable while the monster continues feeding. Eventually, the survivors discover that extreme cold is the creature's only weakness. Using fire trucks filled with freezing chemicals, they manage to immobilize the blob before transporting its frozen remains away. But the victory is far from certain. A small piece of the creature survives, waiting silently to thaw one day and begin feeding all over again. The parasite. Rose is a young fashion designer whose life changes forever after a horrific car accident leaves her face severely disfigured. Desperate to restore her appearance, she agrees to undergo an experimental stem cell treatment developed by Dr. William Burroughs. The procedure seems like a miracle at first, healing her wounds almost overnight, but the treatment comes with a horrifying side effect. A living parasite begins growing inside Rose's body, forcing her to feed on human blood to survive. Everyone she attacks becomes infected with a violent disease that spreads across the city within hours, turning ordinary people into savage killers. As the outbreak spirals out of control, Rose desperately searches for Burroughs, hoping he can reverse the mutation. Instead, she discovers the treatment was created using tissue from his late wife, whose body had transformed into a mindless mass of living flesh. Burroughs refuses to help, believing Rose's condition could unlock the secret to immortality. After a desperate struggle, Rose seemingly dies, but awakens once again. Rather than saving her, Burroughs decides to keep her imprisoned forever, treating her as nothing more than a living experiment for his endless research. The hive mind. Grant is a wealthy businessman whose life changes after a mysterious meteorite crashes outside his small town. Inside it is a parasitic alien that infects him, slowly taking control of both his body and mind. As the creature grows, Grant mutates into a grotesque mass of tentacles and flesh with an insatiable hunger to spread the infection. He kidnaps a local woman named Brenda, transforming her into a living incubator that gives birth to hundreds of slug-like parasites. These creatures crawl into people's mouths, infecting them and linking every victim to Grant's consciousness through a horrifying hive mind. Within hours, the peaceful town descends into chaos as friends, neighbors, and entire families become part of the same alien organism. Sheriff Bill Party and a small group of survivors eventually discover that killing Grant is the only way to free the infected. During the final confrontation, they lure the monstrous creature into the open and pump it full of gas before blowing it apart in a massive explosion. With Grant dead, the hive mind collapses, freeing the remaining survivors and finally ending the alien invasion. The new identity. Vicente is a young man whose life is destroyed after renowned plastic surgeon Robert Ledgard blames him for a tragedy involving his daughter. Instead of seeking justice, Robert kidnaps Vicente and subjects him to years of horrific medical experiments. Kept imprisoned inside a secluded mansion, Vicente is forced to undergo countless surgeries that completely transform his body. Robert performs a sex reassignment operation, reconstructs his face, and covers his body with an advanced artificial skin designed to resist burns and injuries. Little by little, every physical trace of Vicente disappears until he is transformed into a woman named Vera. Despite the new appearance, Vicente's memories and identity remain intact, trapping him inside a body that no longer feels like his own. After years of psychological abuse and isolation, Vera gains Robert's trust and finally finds an opportunity to escape. She kills him before returning to her hometown, where no one recognizes the person standing before them. Facing her own mother, Vera reveals the heartbreaking truth with just a few words. "I'm Vicente." Although she finally regains her freedom, the life she once had is gone forever, making her transformation a fate far worse than death. The new flesh. Max Wren is the president of a television network constantly searching for more shocking content. His obsession leads him to discover Videodrome, a mysterious broadcast filled with graphic torture and violence that seems disturbingly real. Fascinated by the signal, Max begins watching it repeatedly, unaware that the transmission is far more than a television program. The broadcast secretly emits a signal that creates malignant brain tumors, causing terrifying hallucinations and grotesque physical mutations. Soon, Max's body starts changing in impossible ways. A living opening forms in his abdomen, allowing videotapes and even weapons to merge directly with his flesh. As reality and illusion become impossible to separate, he is manipulated into becoming an unwilling assassin by those controlling the signal. Every transformation pushes him further from his humanity until his own body becomes a fusion of flesh and technology. In the end, Max realizes he has become exactly what Videodrome intended, a weapon shaped by media and manipulation. Believing there is only one way to escape his nightmare and embrace the new flesh, he pulls the trigger on himself, leaving behind one of the most disturbing body horror endings ever filmed. The perfect imitation. An isolated research station in Antarctica becomes the center of a terrifying nightmare after a strange creature is discovered hiding inside what appears to be an ordinary dog. The scientists soon learn that the organism is an alien life form capable of perfectly imitating any living being it infects. Instead of simply killing its victims, the creature absorbs them at the cellular level, replacing every part of their bodies until the imitation is impossible to distinguish from the original. As paranoia spreads through the station, no one knows who can still be trusted. Friends turn against each other, blood tests become the only way to expose the creature, and every encounter could mean death or assimilation. One by one, the survivors fall as the alien continues to spread. Realizing there is no way to guarantee the creature won't reach civilization, helicopter pilot R.J. McCready destroys the entire station to stop it. In the freezing aftermath, only McCready and Childs remain alive, sitting together in the snow with no certainty whether either of them is still human. Their fate is left unresolved, ending the film with one of horror's most unforgettable conclusions. The Walrus. Wallace Brighton is a cynical podcaster who travels to Canada looking for bizarre stories to boost his show. There, he meets Howard Howe, an elderly sailor who invites him to stay at his secluded mansion while sharing incredible tales from his past. After drinking drugged tea, Wallace wakes up trapped inside the house with one of his legs surgically amputated. Howard soon reveals his horrifying obsession. Years earlier, he survived at sea thanks to a walrus he called Mr. Tusk, and now he intends to recreate that bond by transforming Wallace into the animal. Through a series of brutal surgeries, Wallace loses his limbs, his skin is stitched into a grotesque walrus suit, and tusks carved from human bones are attached to his face. As the mutilation continues, his mind slowly breaks until he begins behaving like the creature Howard wants him to become. Wallace eventually kills Howard during a final confrontation, but the damage is irreversible. When his friends finally find him, they discover that almost nothing human remains. Unable to restore his body or mind, Wallace spends the rest of his life living in an animal sanctuary, trapped forever inside the body of a walrus. The shunting. Bill Whitney is a wealthy teenager who has always felt like he doesn't belong in his own family. Strange nightmares and disturbing visions convince him that something is terribly wrong, but everyone around him insists he's simply imagining things. As Bill digs deeper, he uncovers a horrifying secret hidden beneath his family's perfect image. The wealthy elite are part of a grotesque cult that gathers for an unimaginable ritual known as the shunting. During the ceremony, their bodies melt together into a massive, pulsating mass of flesh, twisting bones, skin, and organs into impossible shapes. The rich literally absorb the bodies of the lower class, feeding on them to satisfy their unnatural desires, while remaining completely conscious throughout the horrifying process. Friends, relatives, and neighbors willingly merge into one living organism, laughing as human bodies are stretched, fused, and consumed. Bill barely escapes the ritual after exposing the horrifying truth, leaving the mansion as the grotesque gathering collapses behind him. By the end, he realizes the nightmare is far bigger than his own family, suggesting that the powerful have been hiding their monstrous nature in plain sight all along. The human centipede. Two American tourists, Lindsay and Jenny, become stranded in the German countryside after their car breaks down. Hoping to find help, they unknowingly seek shelter at the home of retired surgeon Dr. Joseph Heider, a man obsessed with creating what he calls the perfect human organism. After drugging the women, Heider kidnaps a Japanese tourist to complete his horrific experiment. Using his surgical skills, he removes their teeth, severs important ligaments, and stitches each victim mouth to anus, forcing them to share a single digestive system. The result is the grotesque human centipede, a living chain of suffering with no dignity or hope of escape. Heider treats his victims like trained animals, forcing them to crawl, obey commands, and endure constant humiliation. As their condition rapidly deteriorates, every attempt to escape ends in failure. Eventually, the doctor is killed during a violent confrontation, but freedom comes too late. Katsuro takes his own life, and Jenny dies from her injuries, leaving Lindsay trapped in the middle of the nightmare. Surrounded by two lifeless bodies and still stitched to them with no possibility of rescue, she is left alone, helpless and alive,